Welcome back to the deep dive
Yeah,
today.
definitely.
We're going to be tackling a pretty crucial area of healthcare. We're going to be looking at the global market for treating critical limb ischemia.
CLI.
CLI, exactly. And
Yeah.
we've got a recent market analysis that we're going to be using as our main source today.
Okay.
And our goal is to break it all down, pull out the essential information so you can really get a shortcut to understanding this significant and also evolving area.
Absolutely. CLI, as you might know, it's a very severe form of reduced blood flow
Yeah.
to the legs and feet.
Mm-hmm.
And if it's not treated properly, it can unfortunately lead to serious consequences.
Right.
So this report that we're looking at today really gives us a fascinating overview
Yes.
of how this condition is being addressed globally, economically, and
Yeah. The scale of this market is pretty significant.
yeah.
So in 2025, it was valued at around 680 million USD.
Okay.
But here's where it gets interesting. Projections are showing a jump to 11,484.96 million USD
Wow.
by 2033. That's a compound annual growth rate, CAGR. Think of that as the average yearly growth over that period
Okay.
of 9.2%.
Wow.
So we're looking at a market that's basically expected to double in size
Yeah.
over, less than 10 years.
Okay.
So today we'll be exploring what's driving this expansion,
Yeah.
where this market activity is concentrated geographically,
Okay.
the different ways that CLI is actually being treated, and the companies that are involved.
Wonderful. So to really grasp why we're seeing this kind of growth, we need to understand the underlying health trends, right?
Right.
So the report points to a few major factors.
Okay.
The first and perhaps most significant is the increasing prevalence of peripheral artery disease, PA.
Yes.
Now, PAD is a broader term for the narrowing of arteries that reduces blood flow, and CLI is essentially the most advanced and severe stage of PA affecting the limbs. As more people develop PAD, it naturally follows that the need for CLI treatment will also increase.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
It's like a domino effect, right?
Exactly.
So,
It's not just PAD on its own, is it?
yeah.
The report also highlights the growing elderly population around the world.
Right.
And as people age, they unfortunately become more susceptible to various vascular diseases,
Right.
which in turn can lead to conditions like CLI becoming more common.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Definitely.
And we also can't overlook the rising incidence of diabetes.
Right.
Diabetes is a major risk factor for developing PAD, and as a consequence, CLI,
Right.
high blood sugar over time,
Yeah.
can damage blood vessels,
Yep.
making them more prone to narrowing and blockage.
Okay.
So these interconnected health issues
Yeah.
are really the engines driving this market's expansion.
Okay. So we've got like a good understanding of the why.
Yes.
Now let's dive into the where.
Okay,
So-
where is all this happening?
Yeah, geographically, where is all this market activity taking place?
Yeah.
So the report really gives us a clear picture of how things are distributed. North America currently holds the largest share, about 37% of the global revenue in 2025, which translates to about 2,101.60 million USD.
Wow.
And it's projected to grow at a CAGR of 7.6% between now and 2033.
What's particularly interesting
Yeah.
is how that 37% breaks down
Yeah.
within North America.
Okay.
The United States is a massive contributor with a market valued at 1,658.16 million USD in 2025.
Whoa.
Projected KGR of 7.4%.
Okay.
But Canada is showing some really impressive growth potential,
Oh, wow.
with a forecast KGR of 18.7%
Wow.
from a 2025 market size of 151.85 million USD.
Wow, that's a huge difference.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mexico, with a market of 191.25 million USD in 2025, is also expected to see pretty healthy growth of 8.1%.
Okay, so that Canadian growth rate is really jumping out.
Yeah.
What's behind North America's overall leading position?
Several factors are contributing.
Yeah,
As the report highlights, the high prevalence of both PAD and diabetes in the region
right.
is a major one. Additionally, North America benefits from very advanced research and development in the area of vascular treatments.
Yeah.
There are also strong reimbursement policies in place,
Right.
meaning that access to these treatments is generally well supported financially.
Okay.
And finally, there's a significant amount of innovation happening in minimally invasive treatment approaches,
Right.
which are becoming increasingly preferred.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Okay, so let's move over to Europe.
Okay.
They hold a substantial 30% of the global market share,
Okay.
with a market size of 1,647.2 million USD in 2025.
Wow.
And their projected CAGR is 8.2%.
And within Europe, we see some key individual markets.
Oh,
The UK market is estimated at 276.73 million USD in 2025,
okay.
with a strong 9% CAGR.
Got it.
Germany follows closely with a market of 326.15 million USD
Okay.
and an 8.4% projected annual growth. And France has a market size of 151.54 million USD with an expected CAGR of 7.4%.
Okay. So what's driving the growth in Europe? Are we seeing similar factors at play as in North America?
To some extent, yes.
Okay.
The increasing adoption of minimally invasive procedures
Okay.
is a significant driver.
Right.
Also, across many European countries, there's notable government support for initiatives aimed at improving vascular health,
Okay.
which helps in early diagnosis and access to treatment.
Got it. Got it. Now let's shift over to the Asia-Pacific region.
Right.
They account for around 25% of the global market, with a market size of 1,363.20 million USD in 2025.
Wow.
But what's really striking is their projected CAGR, 12%.
That's huge.
That's the highest growth rate we've seen so far.
Absolutely.
If we look at specific countries within APAC, China is a major player with a market of 572.54 million USD in 2025 and an 11.5% CAGR.
Okay.
India is another really significant growth engine
Yeah.
with a 136.32 million USD market
Wow.
and an impressive 13.9% projected annual growth. Even Japan, which is a more mature market in this space, is still showing a solid 10.5% CAGR from a 2025 base of 188.12 million USD.
That rapid growth in the Asia-Pacific region seems really significant.
Yeah.
What's fueling it?
Yeah, what's fueling it?
So several key factors are at play.
Okay.
The region has a rapidly aging population.
Right.
And as we've discussed, that naturally leads to a higher incidence of vascular diseases,
Right.
perhaps even more significantly.
Yeah.
There's a very high and increasing prevalence of diabetes in this part of the world.
Okay.
The Asian Diabetes Prevention Initiative actually highlights that the Asia-Pacific region accounts for nearly 60% of the entire global diabetic population.
Wow.
That's a huge driver.
Yeah, yeah. It makes sense.
Yeah, on top of that,
Yeah.
many countries in the region are making increasing investments in their healthcare infrastructure,
Right.
which is making advanced treatments for conditions like CLI more accessible to more people.
Okay, got it. Let's round out our global tour.
All right.
South America holds about 4% of the market, with a size of 215.84 million USD in 2025,
Okay.
and a projected CGR of 9.9%. Brazil and Argentina appear to be the key players there.
Yes, Brazil has a market size of 92.38 million USD and a 10.5% CAGR,
Got it.
while Argentina's market is 36.26 million USD
Yeah.
with a slightly higher growth rate of 10.8%.
Got it.
The factors driving growth in South America
Yeah.
include expanding access to more advanced medical treatments
Right.
and a growing level of awareness about CLI.
Right, okay. The Middle East also accounts for around 4% of the global market,
Okay.
estimated at 227.200 million USD in 2025,
Got it.
with a 10.5% of EGR.
Right.
Saudi Arabia and the UAE seem to be the standouts in this region.
Saudi Arabia's market is projected at 79.80 million USD with an even slightly higher growth rate of 11%.
Okay.
A significant factor in this region is the unfortunately high prevalence of both diabetes and cardiovascular diseases,
Right,
which naturally increases the need for these types of treatment.
right. Finally, Africa holds just over 2% of the global market, with a size of 124.96 million USD in 2025
Okay.
and a 9.5% CAGR.
Yep.
South Africa and Nigeria are specifically mentioned in the report.
South Africa's market is 43.99 million USD with a 10.4% CAGR, while Nigeria's is smaller at 10 million USD
Okay,
with a 9.7% growth rate.
got it.
In Africa, while there are certainly challenges related to healthcare access and infrastructure, we are seeing gradual improvements
Right.
and increasing investments being made in this area, which contributes to the market growth.
Okay, so we've got a really good overview now of the geographical distribution of the market.
Yeah.
Now let's shift our focus to the types of treatments that are actually driving this market growth.
Okay.
The report breaks it down into two main categories:
Okay.
medication and medical devices.
Right.
On the medication side, it appears that antiplatelet drugs are currently the dominant category.
That's correct. Antiplatelet drugs,
Yeah,
common examples being aspirin
right.
and clopidogrel, they play a really crucial role in preventing the formation of blood clots.
Yeah.
This is a major concern for individuals with CLI because blood clots can further restrict the already limited blood flow.
Right.
These drugs are often the first line of therapy because they help to improve circulation and reduce the risk of further ischemic events. That's when tissues don't get enough oxygen and potentially the need for amputation.
Okay.
Their effectiveness when used in combination with other medications also makes them very important.
Right.
And as we've discussed, the increasing rates of PA and diabetes are directly driving the demand for these drugs.
Okay. Interestingly, the report also points out that lipid-lowering agents are the fastest-growing segment within the medication category.
Yeah.
That makes sense, given the strong connection between high cholesterol, the buildup of plaque in arteries, and conditions like PA.
Absolutely. Drugs like statins are vital in managing atherosclerosis,
Yeah.
which is often the underlying cause of PAD and CLI. Atherosclerosis is essentially the hardening and narrowing of arteries due to this plaque buildup
Right.
by lowering cholesterol levels.
Yeah.
And helping to stabilize these plaques,
Right.
lipid-lowering agents can prevent further blockages.
Yeah.
There's growing clinical evidence demonstrating their long-term benefits,
Okay.
which is leading to their increased use.
Mm-hmm.
They are now widely recommended for patients who are at high risk of vascular events, which is why this segment is experiencing such rapid growth.
Got it. Got it. Moving over to the medical device side,
Okay,
the vascular stent segment is identified as the dominant one.
right.
We hear quite a bit about stents in the context of heart health.
Yeah.
Are they used similarly for limb ischemia?
Yes, very similarly.
Oh.
Vascular stents are absolutely critical in the treatment of CLI.
Okay.
Their main purpose is to physically restore blood flow to the affected limbs.
Mm-hmm.
Think of a stent like a tiny mesh tube that's inserted into the narrowed artery.
Okay.
Once in place, it expands and acts as a sort of scaffolding
Okay.
to keep the artery open, preventing it from collapsing or narrowing again.
Mm.
This is crucial in preventing amputations and improving blood supply to the tissues. Advancements in stent technology, such as drug-eluting stents that release medication directly into the artery wall to prevent re-narrowing,
Okay.
and bioresorbable stents that eventually dissolve over time, have significantly improved patient outcomes
Yeah.
and have driven the widespread adoption of these devices.
Okay.
And again, the increasing prevalence of PAD and diabetes,
Right.
along with the general trend towards less invasive procedures,
Yeah.
is fueling the demand for vascular stents.
Okay. And within the device category, the peripheral dilatation system segment is highlighted as the fastest growing.
Yeah.
What exactly does that involve?
This segment primarily includes balloon dilators, which are specialized medical balloons used to widen narrowed arteries.
Okay.
They also include embolic protection devices,
Right.
which are small filters or other tools used during these procedures to catch any debris that might break loose and travel further down the bloodstream, potentially causing more problems. What's particularly exciting in this area
Yeah.
is the development and increasing use of drug-coated balloons.
Right.
These are balloon dilators
Yeah.
that are coated with medication.
Okay.
When the balloon is inflated in the narrowed artery, the drug is delivered directly to the artery wall to help prevent restenosis. That's the re-narrowing of the artery after the initial procedure.
Okay.
The overall preference for minimally invasive techniques and the ongoing research and development in this area are really driving the strong growth of this segment.
It sounds like there's a lot of innovation happening on both the medication and medical device fronts in this field.
Oh, absolutely.
Now, who are the key players in this quite substantial and growing market?
The report indicates that this is a highly competitive market
Yeah.
with a mix of large global corporations and smaller regional companies.
Right.
Several leading global players really dominate the landscape.
Okay.
These include well-known names like Abbott Laboratories, Medtronic, Boston Scientific Corporation, and Koninklijke Philips NV.
Wow, so some big names.
Big names.
Okay.
These companies typically have very extensive product portfolios in the vascular space and strong distribution networks that reach healthcare providers around the world.
Okay. And what are these major companies focusing on to maintain their competitive edge?
The key really is continuous innovation.
Okay.
They are heavily investing in research and development to create even more advanced stents, drug-coated balloons with improved drug delivery, and they're even exploring newer approaches like regenerative therapies
Right.
that could potentially help to heal damaged blood vessels.
Yeah.
We also see a lot of strategic activity, like collaborations between companies,
Mm-hmm.
as well as mergers and acquisitions, as companies look to expand their market reach and enhance their research and development capabilities.
Right. The report even gives a few specific recent examples of this kind of activity.
Yes, for example, Micromedical Solutions has been providing updates on their microstent technology. This is a very small stent that's being specifically evaluated for treating chronic limb-threatening ischemia,
Okay,
which is a very severe form of CLI.
got it.
It's currently undergoing evaluation in both Europe through the HEAL registry,
Okay,
which has enrolled 200 patients,
right.
and in the United States through the STAND IDE trial,
Okay,
which has completed its enrollment.
okay.
And we're expecting to see the results from that trial in early 2025.
Okay, that's definitely something to keep an eye on.
Absolutely.
And then there was the FDA approval that Abbott received for their Esprit BTK system.
Yes.
That's a really interesting development. It's a dissolving stent that's specifically designed for use in blocked arteries below the knee,
Yeah,
which is a particularly challenging area to treat.
it is.
It releases a medication to help prevent re-narrowing
Yes.
and then is designed to be absorbed by the body within about 3 years.
That's really interesting.
So that sounds like a pretty significant advancement.
It is.
Yeah.
The fact that it dissolves over time aims to address the longer-term issue of vessel re-narrowing
Right.
without leaving a permanent implant in the vessel,
Mm-hmm.
which can sometimes lead to future complications.
Right. Right.
The drug it releases is an immunosuppressive agent called everolimus,
Okay.
which is also designed to help prevent the artery from narrowing again.
Okay. The report also makes mention of the findings from the BEST CLI trial, which came out of Mass General Brigham.
Yes, that was a very important trial.
Okay.
That compared two main approaches for treating patients with chronic limb-threatening ischemia,
Right.
traditional surgical bypass,
Okay.
and the less invasive endovascular therapy.
Okay.
One of the key findings was that for patients who had good quality veins that could be used for a bypass graft,
Yeah.
the bypass surgery actually led to better outcomes in the long run.
Okay.
This really highlights the fact that the best treatment approach for CLI isn't always one size fits all
Right.
and depends on the individual patient's condition
Yeah. Yeah.
and the quality of their blood vessels.
Yeah. So while there's a strong trend towards minimally invasive endovascular therapies,
Yeah.
traditional surgical options still have a very important role to play for certain patients.
Precisely. It really underscores the importance of a personalized approach to treatment planning in this complex condition.
Okay. Finally, before we wrap up our deep dive,
Yeah.
the report briefly touches on some of the broader factors that are influencing this market.
Okay.
We've already talked about the aging population,
Right.
the rising prevalence of PAD, and the increasing incidence of diabetes as key drivers for market growth.
Yes.
What are some of the restraints or challenges and the broader trends that the report mentions?
On the side of restraints, one significant factor is the high cost
Yeah.
associated with many of these advanced treatments, which can unfortunately limit market growth and accessibility for some patients,
Right.
particularly in regions with less developed healthcare systems
Right.
or less comprehensive insurance coverage.
Right.
Additionally, the stringent regulatory frameworks that govern the approval and marketing of new medical devices and pharmaceuticals can sometimes slow down the pace at which new technologies become widely available.
Right.
As for broader trends,
Yeah.
we've already highlighted the increasing focus on minimally invasive technologies as a major one.
Yeah.
The report also points to the ongoing research and development in the fields of biologics and gene therapy as potential future game changers
Yeah.
in how CLI is treated, although these are still in earlier stages of
Yeah.
development.
Yeah. Very cool.
Very cool.
Okay, let's bring it all together then.
Yeah.
We've taken a really comprehensive deep dive into this market report on the global treatment of critical limb ischemia.
We have.
What would you say are the key takeaways that you'd want our listeners to remember from our discussion today?
Firstly, it's clear that this is a market that's poised for very substantial growth in the coming years, projected to nearly double in size, from approximately $5,680 million USD in 2025 to almost $11,485 million USD by 2033. This significant expansion is being primarily driven by the increasing global prevalence of underlying conditions like peripheral artery disease
Right.
and diabetes,
Yeah.
as well as the world's aging population.
Yeah.
Geographically, while North America currently holds the largest market share,
Mm-hmm.
the Asia-Pacific region is anticipated to experience the most rapid growth over this period.
Right.
We're seeing significant activity and innovation in both medication-based treatments,
Yeah.
where antiplatelet drugs are currently the most used, but lipid-lowering agents are growing fastest.
Hmm.
And in medical devices, with vascular stents representing the largest segment and peripheral dilatation systems showing the most rapid expansion.
Okay.
The competitive landscape is dominated by a few major global companies
Right.
that are heavily focused on continuous innovation in minimally invasive therapies and the exploration of new approaches like regenerative medicine.
So a truly massive market
Yeah.
with significant growth on the horizon. Much of it, unfortunately, driven by some concerning underlying health trends,
Yes.
but also a field where there's a lot of exciting innovation happening in terms of available and emerging treatment options.
Absolutely.
And just to really underscore the scale we're talking about,
Yeah.
that jump from a 5.68 billion USD market in 2025 to nearly 11.5 billion USD by 2033
Wow.
is a really powerful trajectory.
Yeah.
It's easy to get lost in all these numbers,
Yeah.
but it's so important to remember
Definitely.
that behind all this market activity
Yeah.
are real individuals and their families
Mhm.
whose quality of life is
Years.
directly impacted by the advancements and accessibility of treatments in this critical area of healthcare.
That's a crucial point to emphasize.
Yeah.
These statistics represent the efforts to improve the health and well-being of countless people facing this serious condition.
So considering the significant projected growth and the increasing emphasis on minimally invasive technologies, it really makes you wonder about the future of CLI treatment.
It really does.
Perhaps you might consider this. With the notable variations in growth rates that we're seeing across different regions globally,
Mm-hmm.
what might this tell us about the evolving landscape of global healthcare priorities
Yeah.
and the equitable access to advanced vascular care in the decade ahead?
Yeah.
It raises some really important questions about how these advancements will reach the people who need them most,
Yeah.
wherever they may live.
That's a profoundly important question to keep in mind as this field continues to evolve.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive
Absolutely.
into the critical limb ischemia treatment market.
Yeah.
We really hope this has provided you with a much clearer understanding of this vital area of healthcare and the direction it's heading in.
Definitely.
Till next time.